This week on Jerusalem Dateline, to annex or not to annex? The question still facing Israel and what it should do with its biblical heartland. Plus, Israel's first Christian Arab ambassador tells Scott Ross why he stands for the Jewish state. And digging the Bible at Shiloh, Israel's ancient capital. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. After days of high-level meetings, the White House is still undecided over whether or not to back Israel's annexation of parts of biblical Judea and Samaria, known as the West Bank. As CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports, the stakes for Israel and the Middle East are high.
After his White House meetings, U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman will continue discussions back in Israel. He will work on the maps to define the area for annexation as laid out in President Trump's peace plan. But many Israelis say the word annexation is a misnomer.
It's not an annexation, it's applying the Israel law over this area.
Meir Deutsch of the Israeli settler organization Regavim says they need to know what declaring sovereignty over 30% of Judea and Samaria means for a future Palestinian state that could be located on the other 70% of the area.
If the only way of Israel applying sovereignty over this area is a creation of a terrorist state in the land of Israel, we are against applying the law over this area. However, if this is not part of a creation of a terrorist state, so we're definitely for it.
One of the most contested areas is called E1, which is behind me. For Palestinians, it links Bethlehem in the south to Ramallah in the north. For Israel, it links Jerusalem to the Dead Sea and Jordan Valley. On the other side of E1, less than 5 miles from Jerusalem, is Ma'ale Adumim, an Israeli city of nearly 40,000 residents that would likely be annexed.
In the city, people are very interested. They want the annexation.
But Yossi Dagan, head of the Shomron Regional Council, says while Trump is the best president ever for Israel, the Jewish state can't go against the command of God.
The land of Israel is a gift from the Holy One. It's not just a promise of prophecy and the prophets. It's also a command. We have no right to relinquish 1 centimeter of the land of Israel.
Around 200 House Democrats sent a letter to President Trump opposing the annexation. The UN Secretary General warned against Israel extending its sovereignty over the area, which Israel could put to a vote in the Knesset as early as July 1st.
If implemented, annexation would constitute the most serious violation of international law, grievously harm the prospect of a two-state solution, and undercut the possibilities of a renewal of negotiations.
But many Christian supporters of Israel also believe the plan should go forward, with one saying it's not annexation, it's Israel's land.
I don't know anything about an annexation plan being drawn up. I know about a sovereignty plan. This is the Bible land, and that the Bible is not illegal.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Ma'ale Adumim.
One voice in the debate over sovereignty here in Israel is Caroline Glick, the author of The Israeli Solution, a one-state plan for peace in the Middle East. I talked with Glick about why she believes this is the time for Israel to assert its historical and biblical claim to Judea and Samaria. Caroline, thanks for joining us on CBN News about this very important topic. First of all, you're in favor of sovereignty, declaring sovereignty over 30% of the Judea and Samaria. Why are you in support of this?
Well, just to be clear, I'm for applying Israel's sovereign rights over all of Judea and Samaria, but I will take 3%. I think it's very, very important for a number of reasons. The most important of which is that it makes clear that we're not going to be making ourselves vulnerable to national destruction by surrendering our control over our eastern frontier with Jordan and really with the entire Islamic world in the Jordan Valley, and that our Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria are permanent communities. 500,000 Israelis today live in these communities. They've been delegitimized and slandered as some sort of parallel to terrorism, as some sort of moral equivalent to terrorism and murder, which is a ridiculous and morally inexcusable comment or castigation of the homes and cities and towns of Israeli Jews. So I think that the plan that President Trump proposes at least rights that wrong. And we need to do it in conjunction with the United States because these communities and because Israel's national rights and legal rights to Judea and Samaria, which are incontrovertible under international law. I mean, the sovereign rights to these areas was given to Israel to develop a Jewish national home by the League of Nations in 1922.
There are leaders in Judea and Samaria that are concerned that the Trump administration, this Peace to Prosperity plan, also leads to a possible Palestinian state. How do you address those concerns?
Well, we've been living in a reality where the Americans support the establishment of a Palestinian state since George Bush, really Bill Clinton, but George Bush made it official American policy in 2002. And the state that they were talking about was far more dangerous to Israel than the state that Trump is envisioning. The conditions Trump places on the Palestinians, even just to open negotiations, they have to stop funding terrorism, something that they refuse to do ever. And then they have to destroy Hamas and dismantle terrorist organizations, demilitarize, and of course, accept Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, accept Israeli sovereignty in Jerusalem. So I think that given the conditions that the Trump administration has placed on it, this is not something that should be blocking us from doing what we need to do as a nation going forward, which is to apply our sovereign rights to areas of Judea and Samaria.
Also, the focus right now over this debate over sovereignty has shifted to Washington, D.C. and to the White House. Are there any concerns you have about what's happening there in Washington?
We have a lot of concerns because, we've seen that the enthusiasm in the Trump administration for its own peace plan has waned over the past several months. I mean, Trump presented this plan in January, and we had another hung election essentially in early March. And in the meantime, everything got overtaken by the coronavirus, by COVID-19, that cast everything by the wayside for 2 months. And then after that, you started with the rioting in the United States. So we understand that the Trump administration is distracted, but we also think it's very important, especially with the rioting in the streets. They're trying to overturn everything that America means, the Judeo-Christian foundations of America. And we truly believe that this is actually good for the United States as well. I truly believe it because, if you want to restore faith in the foundational values of the United States that really are predicated on the Bible, it's important to bring Judea into Judeo-Christian values. And by applying Israeli law to parts of Judea and Samaria with American support, I think you do just that. I think it's really a shot of adrenaline for a lot of people in the United States that are feeling demoralized by what they're seeing on the streets. So I think it's important both domestically in the United States, and obviously it's vital for Israel to go forward with this to ensure our survival over time and to assert finally our sovereign rights to the cradle of Jewish civilization, Judea and Samaria. That's where the land of the Bible.
Up next, the remarkable story of the first Christian Arab ambassador for the Jewish state.
CBN Films presents.
It's a very corrupt period in Jewish history at this time.
Written in stone, Jesus of Nazareth.
The emotion is one thing, but the scientific truth is something else.
The life of Jesus changed the entire world.
Jesus walked on this particular street.
But what does archaeology say about where he lived his life?
It's an authentic location in the life of Jesus.
Join Gordon Robertson and unearth remarkable discoveries.
Is it really the place where Jesus spent his last night on earth?
Explore where Jesus traveled.
Jesus went from one Jewish place to another Jewish place.
Where he performed miracles.
And he raised the little girl from the dead.
And where he was tried by Pontius Pilate.
Tradition is wrong.
Get Written in Stone, Jesus of Nazareth. For a gift of any dollar amount, call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/writteninstone.
That changes everything.
Nigerian Christians
in Iran are routinely arrested.
Happily, Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Watch Christian World News, Saturday at 5 p.m.
Nigerian Christians
Christians in Iran are routinely arrested.
Happily, Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Watch Christian World News, Saturday at 5 p.m.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Get Protect Your Sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
With anti-Semitism on the rise, imagine a Christian Arab diplomat serving the Jewish state posted in a Shiite Muslim country that has an open border with Iran. That's the remarkable story of Israel's first ever Christian Arab ambassador. CBN Scott Ross spoke with him before the coronavirus outbreak, ahead of his first posting.
Meet George Glick. Born in Jaffa, or in Hebrew, Yaffo, Glick is Israel's first Christian Arab ambassador.
You can actually see both Jaffa and Tel Aviv here. You know, right. Jaffa is the oldest port city in the world that still exists.
Really?
It is at least 8,000 years old. And the funny thing is, Tel Aviv is less than 100 years old, and we're called a suburb of Tel Aviv Jaffa. Well, I think it should be Jaffa Tel Aviv. I mean, they're big in size, but we're big in history.
A lawyer by profession, Glick grew up in the Orthodox Christian community in Jaffa.
So I love this contrast of the old and new, of modern and ancient, conservative, small town, to this hyper-innovative new city that is revolutionizing the world in many ways.
I spoke with Glick ahead of his first posting in Azerbaijan, a Shiite Muslim majority nation. Why would a Christian Arab choose to be an ambassador for the Jewish state?
I've dedicated more than a decade now for advocating for the case of the State of Israel, and I'm very passionate about this. It is an important cause that I truly believe in.
How did you arrive at that as an Arab, to embrace Jewish values, the Jewish state, Jewish people?
I grew up a block away from where we're sitting right now, and in our building there were 4 apartments. So on the first floor it was us, an Arab Christian family. Across from us was an Arab Muslim family. Above them lived a religious Jewish couple, and on the other side, above us, lived a Catholic priest who was originally born Jewish, saved by a monastery during the Holocaust in Poland, became a priest on the one condition that he would be sent to serve as a priest in the land of his forefathers in Israel. That environment for me symbolizes the essence of the diversity that makes this country what it is. It is where Jews and Christians and Muslims can live their faith without fear, where Arab doctors treat Jewish patients in hospitals in Tel Aviv, and Jewish doctors treat Arab patients from Syria up north.
Glick said supporting a democratic Israel also helps ensure a Christian future in the Middle East.
Israel is just as important to me as an Arab, as a Christian, than it is for any Jewish citizen of the country. Because I believe that a Middle East with no room for a Jewish state is a Middle East that has no room for anyone who is different.
But your view is in the minority, isn't it?
It's not so much a minority view, because people might feel it, but they don't always have the way to articulate it. But at the same time, what I do, representing the State of Israel, is not always warmly received by everyone. Some people like it, and some people don't like it.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Several years ago, as Deke was speaking at the University of California, students calling themselves Students for Justice in Palestine interrupted his talk and tried to prevent him from continuing. How do you view the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel?
You know, Israel has faced many adversaries since its existence. And today we see a new way of trying to put Israel in a crisis. And they're trying to put Israel, this time, in a moral crisis by trying to bring good and well-meaning people into questioning the right of Israel to exist. The reasons change, but the hate stays the same.
There's a commandment from the New Testament, love your enemies. How do you do that?
It's not an easy commandment. It's probably the toughest one to handle for me as a Christian. But I'll tell you one thing. In the Middle East, and in Israel in particular, we don't have the luxury of being a pessimist, because only by keeping hope alive, then we can aspire that hope will keep us alive. You know, a lot of people think that our stories, the Jewish story and the Arab story, are irreconcilable, that one comes on the expense of the other, that we cannot live together. I completely disagree.
Deke's grandparents fled the fighting in Israel's War of Independence in 1948, yet, against the odds, they returned.
And what is it that binds the Jewish story and my family and my community story together? It is the fact that we both endured a great suffering, and yet we chose responsibility, not victimhood. We both went through terrible tragedies, and we chose self-help, not self-pity, life, not death. It is the story of hope. And if they could do it back then, there's no reason we cannot do it today.
Are you assured that what you believe is going to secure the future for your children?
It is basically a fact that Israel is the only place in the Middle East where people of all faiths can live without fear. It is the only place that shows a model how a country can allow you the possibility to be true to who you are and at the same time be a blessing to others regardless of who they are. But it is a fact that here it is the only place that still we have that light, we have the truth, we have that wisdom. Hopefully when I will have children, they will grow up in this country to be proud of who they are and to help others and to be a blessing to their country and to their fellow citizens regardless of who those people are.
Scott Ross for CBN Tel Aviv, Yaffo, Israel.
Coming up, digging the Bible at Shiloh, Israel's ancient capital.
Now, for a limited time, you can get 5 of CBN's critically acclaimed documentaries. Experience the rebirth of the modern state of Israel.
The historic bonds between the Jewish people and the land of Israel cannot be broken.
Relive the battle for Jerusalem in the Six-Day War.
Jerusalem is yours, forever.
Discover how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
When people need us, we volunteer and we come and help.
Explore the world of Israeli technological innovation.
We're people of dreams. God gives us dreams. And that's really the roots, I think, of much of our innovation.
And understand the biggest land dispute in history.
Many Palestinian Arabs claim that the Jews stole Arab land. But is that the real story?
This exclusive Israel DVD collection can be yours for a gift of $40 or more. Call now or go online to get your Israel DVD bundle today.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times best-selling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts, in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain. Get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
More and more archaeological excavations here in Israel validate the Bible. That's true in Shiloh, where the Bible says the tabernacle of the Lord stood for more than 300 years. Here's a look at our story from a few years ago. It's also part of our virtual tour of Israel. You can see on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube platforms. You're looking at the heart of biblical Israel, along the route known as the Way of the Patriarchs. This is ancient Shiloh, the place where the Bible says Joshua divided the promised land between the 12 tribes, and where the tabernacle of the Lord stood for more than 300 years.
Welcome to ancient Shiloh. This is the first capital of ancient Israel, and it's a sacred spot because the Mishkan was here, the tabernacle where people came to connect with God.
Scott Stripling directs the excavation here, and along with dozens of volunteers, they're digging into history.
We're dealing with real people, real places, real events. This is not mythology. The coins that we excavated today, we're talking about coins of Herod the Great, Pontius Pilate, Festus, Felix, Agrippa I, Agrippa II. The Bible talks about these people. We've got the image right there.
That image includes a fortified wall built by the Canaanites. They're finding a treasure trove of artifacts, including coins and 2,000 pieces of pottery a day.
These are those handles from the stone vessels. Remember Jesus' first miracle at Cana, they were stone jars.
An archaeologist looks at these shards as a fine timepiece.
Just like your great-grandmother's pottery is different from your pottery that you're using today, and once we learn the pottery, then we can use it as our primary means of dating.
Stripling says literally digging into the Bible can change your life.
You can read the Bible, you can walk the Bible, but the ultimate is to dig the Bible. You know, when we actually get into the soil, like these students from Lee University, they're literally, it's under their fingernails and in their nose and their mouth and their ears, and they're exposing this ancient culture. It becomes one with you. And sort of like we came out of the soil, and as we dig into this soil, we connect with God and with each other, I think, in a very important way.
People from all ages man the dig, with the main drivers being students like Abigail.
It's tiring and exhausting, but it's really rewarding. It's exciting to find ancient things that have been laying in the dirt just waiting for us for thousands of years.
She says the Bible comes alive in the dirt.
I read the Bible totally differently than I did before I came here, and when I read the Bible, I know the places, I know what's going on, I understand it more deeply, especially where previous archaeologists have claimed that the archaeology disproves the Bible, but when we dig here, we find that everything matches. You read it in the Bible, you dig in the dirt, and there it is.
Archaeology doesn't set out to prove or disprove the Bible. What we want to do is to illuminate the biblical text, the background of the text. So to set it in a real world culture, to what we call verisimilitude. So we get an ancient literary description. Now we have a material culture that matches that. Chris, you're sitting where Samuel and Eli and Hannah and these people that we have read about, they came just like us, needing answers, needing to connect with God, needing forgiveness. Faith lessons for us is that God is the potter and we're the clay. And even if our lives are broken, like these vessels are, God told Jeremiah, after he told him to go to Shiloh and see what he had done, he told him to go to the potter's house and look at a flawed vessel and see how the potter puts it back on the wheel and works out the imperfections. So my faith lesson is this, that yes, we're imperfect, but if we'll allow God, he wants to put us on his potter's wheel and he wants to make us a vessel of honor.
Stripling often cites Psalm 102 that says, "O Zion, your servants take delight in its stones and favor its dust."
For me, this is sacred soil. This is where the Mishkan was, which answers that most basic of all human questions, how do I connect with God? And I think everyone watching today, that's their most basic question. I know I'm messed up, and I know that God is holy. How do I bridge that gap when I sin against other people, when I sin against God? And ultimately, Chris, if the Bible is true, then the God of the Bible has a moral claim on our lives. And as we establish the veracity of the biblical text, I hope that everyone watching will just think about that God loves us and he has a moral claim on our lives.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Shiloh, Biblical Samaria. Up next, follow us in and around Jerusalem on our Facebook Lives.
CBN Israel, standing with Israel and blessing God's people. Join us. Get breaking news from the Holy Land. Witness biblical history uncovered. Learn the true story of Israel through groundbreaking films. Help Holocaust survivors and other Israelis in need. Be part of the redemptive story God is telling through his chosen people. CBN Israel, Together we will stand. Join CBN Israel today.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Since COVID-19 hit and visitors cannot come here to Israel, we often take our iPhone and walk in and around Jerusalem and Israel to show you the biblical sites as well as daily life here. Here's a look at a recent Facebook Live from the Jewish Quarter in Jerusalem's Old City.
We're into probably the center of the Jewish Quarter, this square. It's and right outside what's called the Herva Synagogue. This was rebuilt several years ago. And was destroyed during the war in 1948, but rebuilt. And so you see lots of families here, a lot of children singing or playing. Jump rope over here, just like the scriptures coming alive. I believe it's Zechariah chapter 8:5, if I'm not mistaken. But you see these little girls playing jump rope, having a pretty good time. And you also see what's right here to my left is the menorah that has been built by the Temple Institute to go back into the third temple. And I'll read you the inscription here. It says, was recreated for the first time since the destruction of the second temple, according to the research conducted by the Temple Institute.
If you'd like to follow these Facebook Lives, go to our Facebook page at Jerusalem Dateline. Well, that's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.